Welcome back to Woodworking with Wes. Last week, as we did the final install on our kitchen, I had built a couple of doors wrong. Before we get started on repairing that, I just wanted to point out I took a little tumble and scratched my head. It's not a woodworking or wood shop injury, just so you know. But anyway, let's get started on repairing those doors. These are the pantry doors that I have built incorrectly. These are the lower doors, these are the upper doors, and I built them too narrow. So I have to go ahead and make them, somehow I have to make them wider. Let's take a look at the options that I have and the one that I chose to make these better. I just wanted to show you this little stick right here is 7/16 in width. That's how much small I made each door. I made each door smaller than it should have been by 7/16 of an inch. Now the options that I have is of course to remake the whole door. Our stiles and rails, this is one of the stiles. It's 3 inches wide. So if I remake the door using 3-inch wide stile and rail, I need to make the panel this much wider in order to compensate for how small I made it. The other option that I have is to make the rails wider. Now that's what we call re-rail, and we're able to use the panels over again, but we re-rail. Here is a piece of our original stile. Here's how much wider we would have to make, but we wouldn't do it all on one side either. We would do it on 2 sides, and so we would divide that 7/16 in half. This is 7/32 of an inch, and then we would put that on the outside and make the stiles and rails that much wider. However, that creates a problem. If you look really close here, because we have a rounded edge on there, I couldn't just put a new piece on there because I would have a groove that I would have to deal with. What I would have to do is I would have to take and cut off that rounded edge and reapply, but now this wouldn't be enough. I would have to put a piece on this size on the outside of each stile in order to create the extra width that I need. The one thing about that is it creates a seam, a visible seam, the whole length of the doors. On uppers and lowers there would be this visible seam. I don't want to have that either. So what I've decided to do is to use my panel and remake new stiles and rails that are the additional width that I need. I have already milled new stock for my new stiles and rails that I need to do. Now when I did my original doors, I had my doors put together and then I took them and had them wide belt sanded, so I ended up with a little bit thinner stock than I did when I first put my doors together. So in order to redo just the stile and rail, I need to now make sure that my stile and rail stock, my new stile and rail stock, is the exact thickness that my stock was after I had it wide belt sanded. And then we'll just go ahead and finish sand it afterwards. First thing we need to do is break apart our door to get the panel out. Now that's, I've got this door nice and glued together, but I'll show you how I do it. I just pound it on the corner, and there the stile and rail breaks loose. Because our panel wasn't glued in, our panel can be taken out. Okay, let's give it a little encouragement here. There we go. Okay, and there's our panel. We can reuse this panel. We'll show you how we have to clean this up as we get ready to assemble, but we have to clean up this edge right here where it went together, but now our panel is still a nice panel and we can reuse it. The first thing we do, of course, is make our rail cuts. This is our sample board, and remember, always do a sample cut first. Here's our sample cut that we've done on the end of our rails. Here's our rail stock. I always mark the face of my rail stock, and that goes down because of the way the cutter works. Let's go ahead and cut our rail stock. Okay, just like that. Rail stock all cut. Now, ready for the stile cut. I've spent the last few minutes changing my rail cut bit out to my stile cut bit, and I used my sample piece to line up the groove with the tongue. So this is our rail cut, this is our stile cut, and our groove has to line up with our tongue. Let's go ahead and run a piece and see how it happens. Okay, there's our stile cut all done, ready to go. Now we'll run the edges of all of our rail pieces and our stiles top to bottom. I have the new stiles and rails all done now. We're going to set those off to the side. We have a little bit of work to do on the panel that we took out of our existing old door. There's a little ridge that is right along where the door panel met the frame, and there's the stain and lacquer leaves a little bit of a ridge. It's not much, but we want to take that off. We do that by just taking our sander and just going along there and just sanding off that ridge all the way around. And we do that front and back. On the back side, we sanded with 120 grit and then went over it with 150 to smooth it off. On the front side, we're only just going to sand a little bit of the scoop. We don't want to touch the face of the panel, and we're just going to use our 150 grit. And we're basically going to do it just like that. We're just going to sand that edge where that little bead is, where that little ridge is, and just smooth it off so that it can go together a little easier when we assemble the door. I just wanted to point out we have sanded through some of the existing stain and lacquer on this when we sanded our edges. You can see it a little bit better on the back. We're not worried about that because we are going to restain the frame that goes around it, and any of this will be picked up with the new stain that we put on and clean it up. So let's go ahead and put that right there. Here's our frame. Remember our use of space balls that create the space between the frame and the panel so that it has expansion and contraction. The panel is 1/4 of an inch narrower and 1/4 of an inch shorter than the opening that is allowed by our grooves in our stile and rails. That allows the door to expand and contract with heat and humidity. Now we're ready to go ahead and put that together. Now I've marked my stiles where I want my glue together. Again, we don't glue in the panel, we only glue the stile and rail pieces together. I did a video on putting doors together, so if you have any questions about how I put my doors together, that's a great video to watch, a little more in depth. But this is how I'm fixing the doors that I built wrong. Same process once we get the new stile and rail done. So this goes back to same thing we're doing when we build the door to begin with. Okay, here goes our rail there. I'm assembling this with the face toward you. So there's the front of our panel to you. We slide it down in the groove like that. Put our other rail in like that. And then we put the other stile on top. Okay. And then comes the clamps like this. What I'm doing now is pounding the stile and rail level as I clamp it together. Okay, there. One of the things that we do as we assemble our door is to make sure that we keep it square. And we're not quite square yet, so we give a little bump there. Ooh, that did it. That's what we wanted right there. And I always start at one end and get one end clamped up all the way. Okay, and check my square again now that I've got the clamp on tight. Yes, there we are, just where we want to be. And move over to the other end, and same process. Make sure that it's flush on the end and tighten down. Okay, we gotta push this out a little bit, so we'll just use a little block here to, oh, there we go. Ooh, yeah, that's what we're after right there. Okay, and there our door is all glued up. We just took our door out of clamps. We allowed it to dry for about an hour and a half, and we're ready to sand it now. We don't need to sand the panel because our panel, we've used our old panel. That allowed us to skip one step in making the door. By just making our stile and rails a little bit wider, we saved ourselves all the work on making new panels. You can see where that sand through that I was talking about shows. This will all be restained when we stain the edges. I've put 80 grit sandpaper in my sander. We'll sand the back of the door, 80 grit. We'll sand all the way around the edges and the front of the door. And like I say, just the frame. We'll sand it 80 grit, 120, and then we'll drill and route the edge, and then 150 for our final sand. Let me go ahead and get that far and show you how it looks. And there you go, mistake all repaired, doors ready for the paint shop. And we'll see you next time on Woodworking with Wes.